Okay, so Oliver has a question about basically building a bounce system off of, some kind of support resistance indicator here. So one of the comments here, all right, so part of Oliver's question is about using round numbers. Yeah, so as far as using, round numbers, that has to come from the indicator, all right? So Bloodhound's not going to modify an indicator's, output values, right? So Bloodhound's not going to round, say, for example, a moving average value, right? So if you need to use rounded values, you'll have to basically modify the indicator yourself or ask the developer to modify the indicator, to round those values of, whatever the indicator is producing there. So, oh, okay. Yeah. So Oliver's saying, yeah, round numbers, like he wants to round up to the nearest 100. Yeah. Again, you will have to modify the indicator to do that yourself, or ask whoever built the indicator to do that. So it's not the responsibility of Bloodhound to round values for you. It's the responsibility of the indicator to produce the values that you want. Yeah, so you're not going to find, Bloodhound, none of the Bloodhound solvers are going to round values for you. The indicator should be coded correctly to do what you want it to do. It's not the responsibility of Bloodhound to fix or correct or modify, an indicator's values or outputs, right? Rest of the question is about using the VWAP, for example. Yeah, because the VWAP has 7 values. Yeah, that could be, the standard deviation values can be used as support resistance here. And yeah, so Oliver's looking for a signal in the opposite direction there. Yeah. So this has been done kind of many times in the past, just using different indicators. Typically, like a moving average is probably the most common indicator, in previous workshop topics there, when you're essentially what Oliver's looking for is a bounce signal, right? So when price hits some kind of indicator line, then generate a signal in the opposite direction there. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. So I guess Oliver's comment about using rounded numbers is really about using evenly spaced intervals. Yeah. All right. All right. So we're gonna be, yeah, in a nutshell, we're gonna revisit building a bounce system. So a lot of different variations of bounce systems have been built back in NinjaTrader 7, right? And, the one we're going to build today, NinjaTrader 8, is still the concepts of a bounce system are the same. The solvers that we're going to use are the same, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that those older videos of those bounce signals are still valid today, right? Because those trading concepts don't change. So I could, if I wanted to, I could go and find one of those old workshop videos and open up that Bloodhound file and grab that bounce signal out of it and then just tweak it so that instead of using the pivots indicator, we could go into the support resistance solver and replace the pivots indicator with the VWAP indicator, right? And basically it would all work. In fact, I might actually do that. Yeah, you know what? I could teach two concepts in one question. Yeah, so let's do that. So I'm going to go find an old pivot bounce signal system from NinjaTrader 7, that obviously is using the pivot indicator. I'm going to find out, what workshop date I did that from. And then I'll open up that file. We'll copy the logic, in other words, all the solvers out of that older system, and we'll paste it, into BloodHound version 2. We'll paste it into today's new, newer BloodHound here. Let's see. Yeah. So we'll copy the solvers out of the old system and drop it into this new file. And then we'll go through the process of replacing the pivots indicator with the VWAP indicator. And then we'll kind of analyze the signals it's producing and see what kind of adjustments we might need to make. Yeah, and that should do it. Right? So that should be a quicker way of producing this bounce signal instead of just building it from scratch. So we'll start here, search for the pivots indicator and see what we find. All right, so I think this one here will work. Let's see, yeah, we'll give this one a shot here. So, all right, this is using the pivots indicator. And as the description explains, it also has a prior day. Yeah, it's using a prior day open, high, low, close indicator as kind of a filter. So we'll just delete that from the system here. Right. So I'm just interested in the support resistance solver for the pivots indicator there. All right. So let's see here. Actually, this is not that long ago. Interesting. All right. So let's go find that file. All right. So I'm just going to open up that older workshop file here. And there we have it. And boy, oh boy, this is quite the system here. So it looks like right here in the middle, and this should hopefully illustrate why it's very important to name your solvers there, right? So, just by looking at the names of these solvers here, I'm able to figure out what is going on here. What is this logic doing here? So right here in the middle, this part here is detecting when price, gets within the PP line of the pivots indicator, right? So we have the closing price of the bar, 5 points, from the pivot PP point. We have a solver here identifying if the bar touches, is touching the pivot point. Then we have another one here that checks to see if the high or the low of the bar, right? Basically, one of the bar wicks is within 1 point of that pivot, right? So this here is identifying when a bar is within proximity of the pivot's PP line there. And it looks like here, so here's support resistance filters. Well, see, I even named the AND node. So this says right here. So this is various filtering going on. Yeah. All right, let's center this. And all right, so I'm going to select everything here. Make sure I selected everything. Yep. Okay. And let's copy it like so. And now let's go and open up today's file. There we go. There's today's file. And I'm going to zoom out here. There. And let's paste that. All right. Not too bad. And there we go. All right. So just by looking at the names here, right, I've been able to kind of figure out that this section in the middle here is identifying when price is getting within proximity of the pivot's PP line. We have some filtering going on here. And so next, I'm going to see, see what's going on over here. Oh, all right. So over here, it's identifying when the bar is touching R1. Yeah, so this OR node says near R1. Okay, yeah. Here we go. So we have an AND node that says R1 bounce. All right. So we know that this logic, right, all of these nodes are tied into this AND node here, right? So we know that this is for the R1 bounce. And then down here, I would assume this is going to be S1. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so this AND node here is labeled S1. You know, so again, luckily all this stuff is named. All these nodes here are named. So we can see that basically this is the S1 bounce part of the logic there. All right. So hopefully this really hits home with everybody how important it is to label stuff, right? Because when you come back to something a year later, you know, if things aren't labeled, yeah, you're just not going to be able to figure out what's what. It would just take you a long time to try and figure out what's what. So that just saved us a lot of time, you know, having everything labeled here, you know, including, it's not just labeling the solvers here, but, you know, labeling your logic nodes, you know, these AND nodes being labeled, things like that. You know, this OR node has a label, right, near the PP line. Yeah. Let's see. All right. So we need to, we'll do the simple work first, which is replacing the pivots with the VWAP indicator. Let's see here. So this is using a lot of comparison solvers. Let's see, there are a couple of support resistance solvers here. Let's see. Yeah, so if we look at the icons here, we can see there's 2 support resistance and that's it. Yeah, just these 2 support resistance. And then the rest are comparison solvers there. Yeah, so based on what Oliver wants to do, Oliver wants to use the VWAP as an example, but also use evenly spaced interval prices. So like every 100 points on an instrument, something like that. Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking to myself here for a moment. All right, so I think I've figured out how I'm going to explain this. So the part of Oliver's question about, you know, building this a bounce signal here is the wanting to be able to use the evenly spaced interval prices here. And to give you an example of what Oliver's talking about here is let's pull up another support resistance solver. There we go. We'll zoom in there. Yeah, it's not working. All right. Okay. Yeah, and the next update, we've got this zoom fixed here where if you select a node, you hit center view, it'll zoom in on it. But let's just get this done manually. There we go. Right. So one of the options with the support resistance solver here is so on the select type for SR lines is one of them is use price intervals, right? So you can say, okay, so what happens is, right, the support resistance solver creates these, you know, imaginary support resistance lines that are spaced, you know, right now they're spaced 100 points, right? The setting here is in points, so they're spaced 100 points apart, right? And of course, they start at 0. So yeah, so all these imaginary lines start at 0, right? And they count up from 0, right? So 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, so on and so forth. So this part of the bounce signal off of these imaginary lines, that's going to be, yeah, very difficult. And there's no way to set that up automatically, right? So whatever imaginary evenly spaced lines you want to use, when you're making a completed bounce system, the thing is, whatever imaginary lines you have to use, you have to create a whole separate set of logic here, for each of those imaginary lines, right? So again, if you look at this whole system in context, right, we have this upper section that's just purely for the R1 bounce off the pivot R1 line, right? This section down here, you need an entire section here to identify a bounce off of the S1 pivot line, right? And then we have the section here in the middle here. There we go, right? This is looking at a bounce off of the pivot's PP line, right? And so, I guess I reading into Oliver's question, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people think that the support resistance solver kind of automatically identifies bounces. No, it's just identifying a simple condition. Is price close enough, to a support resistance line, or is it far enough away? That's all it's doing. When you take that a step further and say, well, I want to use this for a bounce signal, a bounce signal requires a whole bunch of other conditions that have to be, identified, such as what side of the line are you on, and was price on that side of the line. Yeah, here, instead of talking theoretically, here we go, right? So a good example would be, with, that's a horrible example. Let's see here. Yeah, here's a slightly better example. Would this really be considered a bounce right here? In other words, was the market below the pivot line, for long enough to really say, okay, yeah, the market was underneath the pivot line, so look for a bounce, right? I mean, technically, that is a minor bounce off that pivot line. Same thing right here, right? Price came above, right? So, a bounce has a lot more complication to it, because you got to figure out how to identify, when do you really consider price has been above or below a certain line for long enough to say, okay, yeah, price is coming from below, and so we can now look for a bounce, right? And that's why, that's what most of this is doing here. Most of this is, trying to figure out this part of the bounce signal system, right? Because we can see here that for the most part, price is just consolidated around the VWAP line there. And actually, I'm going to, let's see here. I'm going to make that VWAP line a little thicker. There we go. Yeah, let's make these a little thicker. Yeah, there we go. Right. So most people would, obviously looking back in hindsight, we can say, oh yeah, that looks like a much better bounce because price was below the VWAP for a much, much longer period of time. Right. So that would make a stronger bounce signal there. So when you're, taking this bounce concept, and applying it to these evenly spaced lines, and let's see here. Okay, there we go. So now I have a couple of these imaginary lines here. Right. So, so if you want to apply the bounce to these imaginary lines, right, you can see that we now need, we now need the logic, right? This logic, wrong one. There we go. We now need the logic that identifies when price has been above or below each of these imaginary lines, right? So, yeah, I mean, you would, if you were to code this into a dedicated indicator, same thing. You would need code, that identifies for each of these lines here, when price has been above or below some line, for enough period of time here. All right. So what we'll do is, in order to keep this video, somewhat reasonably, in length here, we'll modify the system that we have to work for, get rid of those, right, to work for the VWAP line, the first standard deviation lines there, right? And then the rest is really just copying and pasting the system and then adjusting the solvers to use the second standard deviation line and the third standard deviation line, and or each of these imaginary evenly spaced interval lines, right, as well. So all right, so I'm going to undo here until this extra support resistance line disappears. All right, well, that's it. Let's just delete it manually. There we go. Okay, where to start first? All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to strip away the prior day indicator filters here. Yeah, so let's get rid of that solver. And, when you no longer need a solver, remember to also remove it from the solvers list. So that way it's not chewing up unnecessary calculations. There we go. Prior day. Yeah, that should be the one. Delete it off the list. There we go. Yeah, so I don't see prior day in any of the names on these other solvers here. All right, so I think we stripped out that prior day indicator filter from the original system that was built. So that's gone. All right, so yeah. Next step, I'm just going to walk through each of these solvers and replace the pivots indicator with the VWAP indicator. Yeah, right. So I'm going to, on the solvers panel here, I'm just going to go through each solver. And right, so when you click on a solver here, then the property inspector, right, we can look at the property inspector and we can look at the inputs here. And there, here, I'll stretch this out a little bit. So we can see, right, this is using the pivots indicator here. So I'm going to open up the indicator. And yep, there it is, right? It's using the pivots indicator. So now I'm going to search for the VWAP. There it is. Let's plug in the VWAP. All right. So I'm just going to use this standard settings here. All right. And let's see. Oh, one thing to make a note of. So this solver here is analyzing the pivots R1, S1. So we need to figure out, what would be the comparable plots from the VWAP indicator. So that should be, actually, you know what? Hold on. Let me cancel that. So I'm going to cancel that. And let's open up open up the pivots indicator again. What I should have done is I should look at the plots. So R1 is used for longs, right? R1 above is longs. S1 are for shorts. So there we go. So R1, that'll be the upper standard deviation 1 for longs. And then S1 will be the VWAP lower standard deviation 1, and that'll be shorts. All right, so let's do this again. There we go. VWAP indicator. Okay, so the standard deviation 1 lower, that's for shorts. And there we go. The standard deviation 1 upper will be longs. All right. There we go. So we got our first solver replaced, and let's remember to adjust the name here. There we go. So I'll just say SD1. Now let's go to the next one down here. So this is the bar touching R1. So we're going to open up the indicator for the pivots here. And again, we're going to check the plots here first. All right, there we go. So R1, so that'd be the standard deviation number 1 upper, and that's long and short. Okay. All right, standard deviation 1 upper, long and short. All right, next one down the list. Okay, so this is R1 and S1. Yeah, R1's upper, or for long, R1 is for long, S1's short. Right. There we go. We have our plot selected. Okay. And there. All right. So we have the second solver named here, and I should go through and name this one. All right, fourth one down. Okay, so this is the bar touching the S1. S1, okay. Okay, yeah, so S1 is both long and short this time. All right, let's plug that in. So S1 is standard deviation 1 lower, long and short. There. All right, next one down. So this one's comparing the closing price to the pivot's PP line. So yeah, the pivot's PP line is long and short. All right, so this will just be the VWAP line, long and short there. Easy enough. All right, next one down. Let's see, so we have 10 points away from the pivots lines. Well, let's see what we have here. So within the indicator, yeah, there's the pivots indicator. Let's open up the indicator window. And so here, all right, all of the pivot lines are selected. All right, everything is selected there. And all right, so let's select the VWAP and we're going to select everything. There we go. So we're just use the select all button and that will select all, everything there. And okay, we have that. All right, we'll rename it to VWAP. There, that one's done. Let's go down to the next one here. And just a moment, folks. I need to put the blinds down my office window here. Sun's coming in, blinding me. Just a sec. Yeah, if you're in the market for a new desk, I would suggest making sure that your desk does not have a glossy top because it will bounce the sunlight right into your eyes coming from the window. All right, let's see, next one down here. So again, we can see in the name, it's the pivot PP line here. So let's open up the indicator and see. All right, yep, it's just the PP long and short. So here, oops, there we go. There's the VWAP now, and the VWAP line is selected for us there. All right, next one down on the list. Let's see here, bar touching the PP line. Let's see what we have. Yeah, the PP line long and short. All right. All right, there we go. VWAP line, long and short. And it looks like the last solver here on the list is doing the same thing. And let's see, yep, again, the PP line, long and short. So there's our VWAP indicator. And the VWAP line is already selected, long and short, good to go. There we go, change the name. And there we have it. All right, so everything has been or I should say all the pivot indicators have been replaced with the VWAP now. And of course, because I adjusted the name of all the solvers, some of these solvers have moved around a little bit. I'll just adjust that. All right, looks good. So this is basically what our initial conversion, I guess we could say. So let's just close this out and take a look and see if there's any signals. And it sure doesn't look like it. Let's see, I'm going to turn the auto scale on there. There. All right, so I think we're not seeing any signals, and I think the issue is that the VWAP lines, well, actually, no, those are definitely 100 points apart. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to find a spot here, that looks like, that we probably should have a bounce signal here. Yeah, I mean, we have a couple of down bars there. So if we zoom in like so, there we go. Yeah, so I'm thinking that bar probably should have generated a bounce signal there. So we're going to go through and figure out, what filters, are preventing signals from operating, or, whatever kind of adjustments might need to be made, with the original pivot system here that's preventing, a signal from being generated there. And so this is, right, the pivot line here. So I should be able to just kind of focus on this logic in here. But first, let me take a look at the filters here. And, well, there we go. So we have an error. Okay. So it looks like probably, it's just a typical kind of index out of range error there. It just means that the VWAP indicator was not ready yet for BloodHound to read it. So if we just reload the chart, voila, there we go. Yeah, I probably should have done that a long time ago. So way back when I copied and pasted the system over, I probably should have done a reload then, and then after I replaced all the pivot indicators with the VWAP, I probably should have done a reload, a reload at that point as well, just to make sure that NinjaTrader gets, all the indicators calculated there. So, okay, there we go. So now that we have a result here, so remember, what I'm looking at is the filters here. Let's zoom in, move that over there. All right, so these filters are, let's see, well, yeah. All right, so let me first analyze what's going on here before I say anything. Well, so I'm not seeing on the chart here what I'm expecting. So that's why I'm just kind of sitting here in silence. Reviewing the output here, making sure I'm not misreading something. Yeah, so I'm just going to check something real quick. Yeah, this is not looking good. All right, so think I might have found an issue with the support resistance solver here. Well, all right, this may not stop us. So these, actually, yeah, you know what? These filters may not be necessary. These filters came from the, right, obviously from the previous system that was doing some kind of comparison with the prior day open, high, and low and close prices. So these actually may not be necessary. I'm just going to disconnect them for now because those are the only two support resistance solvers that I see. So this logic here is using all comparison solvers because yeah, because this is a multi-line bounce system, you know, again, the support resistance solver, you know, is not a bounce solver, you know, it's a support resistance. So, so when you're looking for bounce, you know, you need more, as mentioned earlier, you know, you need more functionality to, you know, identify something as a valid, legitimate bounce. So, yeah, so I don't think those support resistance solvers are actually necessary. Yeah, so let's double check this. Okay, yeah. So this logic here, you know, for the VWAP is actually producing a signal right there on the bar that I suspected it should be. So great, that's perfect. I just, let's see. Yeah, those filters aren't really doing, these filters don't look like they're doing anything. Yeah, not, at least not doing anything anymore. All right. So now that we've analyzed what these filters were doing and eliminated them, yeah, I'm gonna keep going forward here. And let's see, how many days do I got? 15 days. Okay, not bad. So I'm going to rescan the chart again here and see what we have. Interesting. That, you know, that signal doesn't look bad. That one looks correct. Let's see, this guy here looks a little odd. Let's zoom in, see what's going on. There we go. So that is an up bar. But it's definitely below the pivot line. Or I'm sorry, it's below the VWAP line. All right, so I'm going to go through the process of figuring out why are we getting a bounce signal way below, you know, the VWAP line there. All right, so this OR node's labeled near, oh, Yeah, I guess we don't have everything relabeled, do we? There we go, near VWAP. Let's see, probably instead of near, let's just label it at at the VWAP, right? So when we look in closer into this, right, we have one solver, it says if the low or the high of the bar is 1 point from the VWAP, and then we have another solver here, for the bar touching the VWAP, right? And so obviously we have a signal here of the bar touching the VWAP. Here we have another bar touching, and let's see, what am I on? A 1 minute chart? Yeah, and this is the NQ. So 1 point's not very far for the NQ. And we can see that that high is not within 1 point of the VWAP there. Neither is that or that. So that bar is touching. Yeah. So depending on the instrument, this distance here, depending on the instrument and its volatility and whatnot, obviously you need to go in and adjust these distances here. So let's see what happens if we adjust this to maybe 3 points. Let's go into, so I'm going into the comparison settings here. And let's go 3 points, 3 points to -3, -3. Hit apply. And there we go. Right. So we can see the low there is within 3 points of the VWAP. Yeah. And let's see what else we got. There we go. So we have the high of this bar within 3 points there. Right. So we found a, I guess what, a necessary adjustment to be made, right? Because we're on the NQ instrument. Maybe, yeah, the original system might have been built on the ES, in which case for the ES, one point was good enough, right? And let's see what else we need here. Let's see. All right, so we're still trying to figure out this bar here. Yeah. Why do we have a signal there? And actually, this system might have been built to allow for price to penetrate through a support resistance line, and still generate a signal. So eliminating that, that's obviously subjective to the trader as to whether that should be eliminated or not. But still, the point here is I'm trying to figure out why is that signal being allowed. And okay, so there, I add a little more clarity here. So this AND node right here is basically the pre-bounce, right? So we can see as price is coming down, right, it's setting up for a possible bounce. Yeah, again, price is coming down, setting up for a possible bounce, right? Price is coming down, setting up for a possible bounce. And yeah, and as this AND node is labeled, this is actually labeled the bounce, right? So here's what's going on, right? So we have a pre-bounce, and then we have a signal extender, right? Because obviously it takes at least one more bar before you can have a reversal, right? So there is a bar direction here. So the bar direction makes sure that you're not getting a bounce signal on the down bar, but you're getting the signal on the up bar, right? To actually make sure that there is a bounce. So that's why the signal here is on this up bar, right? So we can see that is just technically an up bar there, right? So if we read from the signal extender, right? So remember here, actually, let me mark this. There we go. Little dot, right? That's the setup for the pre-bounce. And then behind this signal extender here, turn off the snapping there. So this signal extender there, right, takes the pre-bounce and takes that condition and extends it forward to allow, right, for the bar to reverse and actually generate the bounce, right? So you take the bar direction here, and yeah, bar direction, and put that in with another AND node, right? So the pre-bounce with an up bar, yeah. So that's why we have a up signal a few bars back. So there's no there's no filtering here that says, okay, if price goes too far past the line, then cancel the signal. Yeah. So I don't think anybody's ever given any specific instructions on analyzing that. So in any case, right? So that's why we have a signal there. And yeah, and there's a short signal right there. Yeah, we already looked at those two. Yeah. Yeah. So here's a question I have is why is there not a signal there for that bar? Yeah, it seems like we should have a long signal there. So let's see what's going on. All right, so let's check the pre-bounce. Yeah, there we go. So we have a bar that's touching the VWAP. So that's our pre-bounce. Oh, I see. Okay. So you notice how the signal extender, right? It has a reset going in here. And the reset is coming from the bar direction. So if we look at this look back here, right? This look back is going into the reset. And we have an up bar right there. One bar prior to the down bar. We have an up bar. So this up bar actually is what, yeah, is what generated or is what reset the signal extender, right? When we look at the signal extender, it's not extending because it's being reset. So let's see what to do. So I need to basically build a better reset here. Yeah. So I don't want this previous up bar to cancel the signal extender of the, I guess you could say the bounce setup bar here. All right. I don't want this signal extender to be reset from a prior up bar. All right. So I might have a simple solution here. And all right. So what I'm doing is I'm making this right, the signal coming out of the pre-bounce, I'm making this a requirement here. Yeah, I'm making this pre-bounce as a requirement for resetting the signal extender. Yeah, so in other words, we have to have this pre-bounce signal with included with the up bar, right? So obviously this prior up bar, there is no pre-bounce signal there, right? So, but an up bar after the pre-bounce will have the pre-bounce included. So that is what I'm trying to set up here. And so we'll find out if this is going to work here in just a moment. Yeah, let's see. All right, yeah, this is going to work here. I just need to finish setting it up, and then I'll explain what we're doing here. All right, this is getting a little tight. All right, let me move this stuff out. There. All right, there we go. That's working now. All right, so what I did, right, so originally, right, we just had a bar direction, and we were delaying it and resetting the signal extender, right? So that's a very common technique for turning off the signal extender. But sometimes, right, like right here, we had an up bar prior to our setup bar, basically our pre-bounce bar. And so this prior up bar was disabling or resetting, our signal extender here. And remember, the signal extender says, let's give this a moment to calculate, right? The signal extender says, okay, we have our setup bar, and now allow 3 more bars afterwards. So take the setup, extend the setup forward by 3 bars, so that way an up bar has 3 bars of opportunity, to show up to give us that bounce, right? Because this is perfect, right? We have a down bar and we have another down bar, right? So the price didn't bounce on this first down bar. As soon as price touched it, right? But price doesn't always bounce perfectly when you want it to, right? So you might have a couple more down bars before you get that up bar, indicating that you might have your possible bounce there. So that's why we have the signal extender, is once price gets close enough, allow a few more bars to go by, in order for price to actually reverse, to give price a chance to reverse there. So I took the pre-bounce requirement, I put it into a look back. In this look back, right, if you notice, right, here's and what happened to my little dot? There. So remember, so this is our setup bar here. And then we have a 3 bar opportunity afterwards for that up bar, right? So I took the pre-bounce, right, put it into a look back, and this is basically doing a 3 bar extension there, right? So we can see it took the pre-bounce signal on the bar with the dot, and now it's extending it forward 3 bars. And then I also combined it with the bar direction into the AND node. So this AND node, right, has, and let's name this here. Right, basically, this is our reset signal. So this AND node has the pre-bounce, with basically, this is a simplified signal extender right here. And then the bar direction, right? And then that goes into this look back, which delays that reset by 1 bar. If we look at this, right, you'll notice the signal coming out of this look back, it's not on this up bar, it's 1 bar after, right? Because we don't want to reset the signal extender on the signal bar. We want to reset the signal extender 1 bar afterwards, right? So this reset, so this reset signal, this is delaying the reset signal by 1 bar, right? By using the displacement function, right? That's basically what Ninja's displacement does, is it shifts everything forward 1 bar. So we took the signal, we took the reset, which is on this up bar, and we shifted it forward 1 bar. On to the next one. So now the signal extender, when we look at this, give this a moment, right? So the signal extender has our setup bar, and it has the next down bar, and it also includes the up bar, which is the signal bar. And then it turns off, right? So after we get this up bar, it turns off afterwards, because we're delaying the reset signal here by 1 bar. So now, when we actually look at the bounce signal and wait for it, there we go. All right, there's that. And let's see, I'm gonna make sure that none of these other signals got messed up here. So yeah, that, and oh yeah, a new one showed up, because look at that, we had an up bar right there. Let's zoom out here. Yep, we had an up bar prior to the bar that touched the VWAP there. And then 3 bars later, we had an up bar, right? So again, there's no filtering, that prevents signals from happening if price goes too far past your support resistance line. Yeah. So that filtering doesn't exist. All right, so there's a bit of cleanup I still need to do here, or finish up work actually. So you notice, right, we have a signal extender down here. So again, so we have a pre-bounce here, and then a signal extender, and then the actual bounce signal, right? So this signal extender has a reset connection as well, and it's been basically disabled now, right? And so we made all of these changes here. So we need to incorporate the same logic for this down here. So let's see here. So I can, I can make a copy of these 2 nodes. Let's paste it right here. Connect that in. Excuse me. Connect in our bar direction. Yeah. And I think that should do it. Let's see if we actually have any signals here. Looks like we actually have one. All right. Luckily, the market is working with us here. And granted us a signal. Yeah, so there we go. So here's the first standard deviation lower, or SD1 lower. And oh, let's rename this here. Yeah, so this is the VWAP SD1 lower. There we go. All right, that's a mouthful. And let's rename this AND node up here. There. Now let's see here. So for this signal, we don't have any down bars that would have reset that setup bar there. So I'm gonna scan a little further. Okay, yeah, let's check these two here. Yeah, there we go. So that is a down bar just prior, right, to the setup bar. So this down bar didn't disable or prevent our bounce signal there, right? That's confirmation that our reset, our new reset signal here that we just, put together real quick is functioning correctly. Let's see, what do we got here? No, our down bar is way prior to the actual setup bar there. So that, but yeah, this one here confirms it. So I'd say we're good to go there. And so let's do the same thing up here. Yeah. You notice how this has its own bar direction there. That's probably a good idea here. So instead of this bar direction, connecting way down here, let's do this. So I don't want to copy and paste this because it literally will make a duplicate. What I do want to do is I'm going to grab this bar direction off of the solvers panel and just drag it down here, right? So this bar direction and this bar direction are the same solver, just visually, we're seeing two visual elements of it, right? But we can see that there's still only one bar direction solver on the solvers panel here. So, right, so we're using the same solver, just visually in two different places. So that way, it just makes the logic board look a little cleaner, a little nicer. And if I could disconnect that, that would be nice. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we're in the middle of a calculation. That's why. All right. Just a moment while this recalculates. There we go. Okay, now it's disconnected. Okay. Yeah, and I was clicking so much it's gonna throw a bunch of errors. All right. There we go. So let's connect that there. Connect that in there. And we can disconnect that. And once again, I better wait for the calculations. All right, there we go. All right, calculations are done. That bar direction was disconnected here. So let's connect that in like so. All right, one more calculation here. All right, so, doing that, placing this bar direction solver, in 3 spots, kind of eliminates all these leaders running all over the place there. So it just makes it look a little cleaner. Let's see here. And all right, so we need to do this one more time for the standard deviation 1 upper. So let's see, what do I need here? So I have my look back there. All right. So I need to copy these two there. Let's just paste them right there. There. All right. Now, since we've already experienced that once we start connecting things around, right, it's got to calculate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the auto update, right? Turn that off. So now when I start connecting stuff, it's not going to automatically calculate, right? It's disabling that automatic update of the result there. So I'm going to disconnect that. I can go through and modify all this here. All right, I think that's good enough. So now let's take a look at that AND node, right? So when I connected that up, you know, it says right here, there you go. Template's changed, but we need to press apply. Yeah, so let's hit the apply button there. So now it's calculating, and we'll check for signals off of the upper standard deviation one line there. I'll have to come back to this. I'm seeing a signal there from the lower standard deviation. These are all from the lower standard deviation. Okay, let me double check what's going on here. Okay, I'm going to rename this OR node here. Yeah, so I'm getting a bunch of signals off of the lower SD1. So let's figure out what's going on. Okay, so yeah, the way, yeah. So this one solver here is specifically the bar touching the standard deviation upper line. But this bar here, or not bar, sorry, this solver is universal. So it's just the high or low within 1 point. And actually, I remember previously we adjusted that to be 3 points. Yeah, so remember this section in the middle here for the actual VWAP line, right? We adjusted it to 3 points there from the VWAP line. So we should make the same adjustment here. Actually, let's go to the solvers list. And let's see, where is it? Okay, so here we go. So we have the high or low 1 point from the VWAP, SD1. So let's adjust this, though it is 3 points. And then go into the output here, settings, and there we go. So make the adjustments to the rules here. So bump everything up to 3 points or negative 3 points there. Okay, so we found that one. Here's a bar touch. 5 points, bar touch. All right, and here's the prior one, the high. That was the high-low, 3 points from the VWAP line. Okay. So there we have that one adjusted. All right, so coming back to where we were prior, right? So we're trying to figure out why this upper logic is also generating signals off of the lower. Yeah, and so the reason why is because this solver here is, it was designed to be more universal. So it's checking the high or low prices against the VWAP standard deviation 1 upper and the standard deviation 1 lower. So yeah, so I guess, the prior system, it was only looking at the pivots R1 probably coming from within the ins, coming from the PP line to the R1, right? So for example, I think the previous system must have been fairly limited where price, let's just pretend like this is the pivot PP line. This is R1, R2, R3, right? So that way, and this is S1, S2, S3 from the pivots, right? So the previous system probably did not identify a short bounce like this, where if price was below S1 and it's coming up, it probably didn't detect, it was probably designed to not generate a bounce signal from below S1. It probably was set up so that price had to be above and price could bounce off of S1 from above, but not from below. All right. Right. And the same thing for R1 here. It was probably designed so that if price came from below R1, it would generate a bounce right from below, but it wouldn't generate a bounce from above. So what I'm going to do is, let's see here. So this, we're going to adjust this so it specifically only works for the SD1 upper, right? So we're going to go into the indicator here and just select upper. For long and short, we're going to select the upper. Let's see. There. All right. There we go. So we can see here, once price gets near the SD1 upper, right, we're getting some output here, a long or short. So if the bar is touching, we get long or short. If the bar is below, we get short only. If the bar is above, what do we got here? Oh, right. Yeah. So hold on. Let's look at this. Right. Okay, so if the low of the bar is within range, yeah, we might want to adjust. Oh, yeah, we do need to adjust this here. So we need to adjust the points here because, so these, this +3 to -3, the low price being +3 to -3 points, away from the VWAP line, the standard deviation upper, right? That was all, oh, wrong one. What do I want? Yeah, so remember, that was designed to work with either the upper or the lower, right? So what was it? The low price was being compared to the upper, and the high price is compared to the lower. But now that we're only using one line, let's see here. So we need to go in and make some adjustments to this. Oh, all right. So we now need to reverse these prices here. So we're actually making a lot more changes than I thought we were going to need to make. But this also kind of teaches you the concept of kind of going through and adjusting your systems here, as well. So actually, no, those were right for a long, yeah, sorry. I'm putting those back. Actually, they were right for a long, low. Yeah. Actually, those were right. So what I'm trying to do here, let me take a step back here. So what I'm trying to do here is come on, there we go. 88, 90. Yeah. So I'm not sure if this is going to be a good or bad thing. We'll find out once we make the adjustments here. So these bars here, what I'm trying to do is, since these bars have already crossed above, I want to remove the short output, right? Because when you look at this, you're probably thinking, that's probably not good for a short bounce anymore. But then again, that's very subjective. Maybe it's acceptable to allow price to punch through your SR line, to a certain extent, and then bounce, right? Right. Markets are very fickle like that. But I am going to kind of narrow the scope here. And I'm going to, or at least I'm trying to eliminate, so that if this high price of these bars, right? So remember, for short output here, we have the high price. So the high price is what's generating the short output down here, right? The short output is coming from the high price being compared to the standard deviation 1 line. So if it goes too high, I want to say, okay, that's no good for a short bounce anymore. And so that's a matter of going into, right, the rules window here and figuring out what that would be. Try that. Yeah, there we go. So, right, I knocked this down to 2. So the high price needs to be within +2 to -3 points from the VWAP, right, upper SD1 line. And we can see right here on this bar, see that high price? So that high price is more than 2 points from the VWAP line. And right down here, right, the short output disappeared right down there. So yeah, so I'll just set it up like that. Yeah. So let's take a look right at the long output here. So if the low is, 3 points, +3, meaning 3 points above, you know, to -2 points, right? So that'd be 2 points below the line. Then we'll get a long output. So if the low, let's see here. Yeah. So as price falls, as the low price of these bars fall, there we go, right here where my cursor's at. This low is more than 2 points, right? It's more than 2 points from the VWAP line. Oh, there we go. Let's put my cursor on the right bar. There we go. Yeah, right. And so we can, so this, I'm sorry, I have my cursor at the high again. Sorry, this low, there we go. There, the low of that bar is more than 2 points from the VWAP line. Right, so the low of all of these bars, even this bar here, so the low of this bar is within 2 points of the VWAP, right? And that's, you know, we can tell because we're getting a long output on that bar, right? So I've kind of fine-tuned this a little bit. And of course, you know, this is all subjective and you'll have to kind of figure out, you know, what values, you know, you want to use for building your own kind of bounce, support resistance bounce systems there. So I'm just going to leave it like this. Click OK. Right. And so this was for the standard deviation 1 upper line. Right. Because remember this upper logic here is for the standard deviation 1 upper line. Right. If we zoom in here, right, if you look at this AND node here, right, there we go. So that tells us which indicator line, right, this is built for. So just make sure you keep your naming all correct and update it as frequently as necessary. And so let's go down here. Remember this lower system here is for the lower standard deviation line, right? This lower line down here. And if we zoom in here, right, this solver now says upper, even though this logic is for the lower, right? And that's because, remember, this system is sharing solvers to minimize the number of calculations, right? To make the system more efficient. Instead of having duplicate solvers that are doing the same thing, having to do twice the calculations, right? This solver and this solver in the previous system were sharing the same, you know, or doing the same calculations, right? And so the same solver was used twice, just like with the bar direction solver, right? Remember the bar direction solver? These are all the same solver, you know, but we just have them visually in 3 different spots to minimize all the connections. So same thing with you know, with these 2 solvers. They're the same solver, just in 2 different spots, so we don't have leaders running all over the place. So let's see here. Actually, kind of looks like, yeah, so I'm seeing there's leaders going from these OR nodes down to these OR nodes. Yeah, so there's definitely, in the previous system, there was definitely something, some kind of closer filtering or connection between the R1 and the S1 lines there. So I don't, yeah, so these, right, so all these SR lines were we're converting them to be independent of each other. So, yeah, so what I'm going to do, let's see, I'm going to disconnect those. There. So there are those leaders, right, running between systems here. Let's see, what were they doing? Oh, interesting. Yeah, so those leaders I was disconnecting, right? It was going into this OR node, which, if I follow it, it's going into this look back, and then it's going into this signal extender. So it was resetting the signal extender. So it looks like in the previous system, S1 was resetting some kind of filtering mechanism for R1 here. And of course, to figure out why you would have to watch the old video, and to understand, what exactly those interconnected lines, why S1 and R1 were connected together like that, resetting those signal extenders. There was something specific about, that system, that tied S1 and R1 together there. Let's see, it's a signal extender. Yeah, not sure what that is off the top of my head. But in any case, right, I'm going to disconnect them. And this OR node is now doing nothing, right? This OR node only has one connection going in and one connection going out. So it's not serving any purpose anymore. I'm going to disconnect it and just connect that straight in like so. And probably the same thing is happening down here. Yeah, we have an OR node that only has one connection in, so it's not doing anything. So I'll just get rid of it for now. Here. Okay. All right, so yeah, we kind of got a little sidetracked there. So getting back to the main issue here, which is making a new comparison solver that's for the lower line, right? So yeah, circling back around to that, that requirement. So let's see. Actually, no, I don't need to do that. What I can do this time, I want to make a new solver. So I'm going to copy this and paste it. And I can get rid of that one. And put that one in. And let's rename this. There. So now this one, yeah, is for the high and low prices, 3 points from the VWAP SD lower line. And if we look at the solvers list here, right, there is that new solver for the SD lower line. So where's the other one? Here we go. So here's the original, right? 3 points from the VWAP SD upper line. So now we have a new solver that's analyzing only the lower line. So now we need to go and switch everything around here, right? So let's go into the, and actually, yeah, well, yeah, let's just go into the indicator first. right, indicator. And this time, right, so the upper, right, the upper line is selected. So now we want to select the lower line there. So now we have to figure out, does the low and the high price need to be reversed? Right, so let's look at this. Right, so we're analyzing this line here. So if price is coming from below, right, and so we want to check, for example, yeah, let's, I guess we'll kind of use this right here, you know, or better yet, this one, right? So the high the bar definitely comes up and gets close enough to that line that you could consider it a bounce. You know, it's price got close enough that it could be bouncing off this line now. So from below, a short bounce is using the high price, right? So when the high gets close enough from below, that could generate a short bounce. And so if, let's see if we have an example here. Yeah. So as price is coming down, all right, this isn't a great example, but as price is coming down, right, the low of the bar, you know, the low of the bar just needs to get close enough to the SD lower, right, for a possible long bounce there, right? So the low price is generating long bounce signals, and, you know, our little example here, the high price would be generating short bounces. So high price for shorts, low prices for longs. Okay, so we don't need to change anything there. That all looks good. So let's take a look at that solver. Let's pull this down. And let's connect that solver in to the result there. We'll take a look. All right, so I'm going to focus in on these few bars. So, right, we have a bunch of short outputs, but we have one long output. So why do we have a long output, you know, on this one bar right there? Well, let's look at how this is set up. So what price point, you know, what bar price are we looking at to generate a long output, right? Price type long, the low price. So where is the low price? Right there's the low price. Now look at the low price of these other bars, right? The low price is way below, right, the standard deviation 1 line here. Remember, this is the line we're looking at, right? So this low price is far down, that low price far down, that low price far down. And then, right, the low of these bars get much higher, right? The low of these bars are either above that SD line or they're very close to it, right? And we're getting all these long outputs, right? So that tells us that this is working correctly. All right, so if we open up the rules window here, so the low price can be 3 points above or 2 points below. The -2 means, right, would be 2 points below that SD1 lower line. And that, right, that low price will generate a long output. Then of course here, right, these two bars here, the high price is too far away, and obviously the low price is too far away from that SD1 line, so there's no output. So that tells us that everything is set up correctly there. Yeah, the only thing we had to do is just, right, so we didn't have to flip these prices around. I didn't have to adjust the output settings here. The only thing I did need to change was just select the SD1 lower line. And everything else in the solver was already set up correctly, right? But it's always necessary just to go in and confirm, just double check things. All right, so I'm just gonna take another look at the final results here. Actually, yeah, let's do that. All right. So this is busy calculating. Time to take a sip of coffee, last little sip of water while this is calculating. All right, we're getting there. There we go. All right, so we have a short signal here. Let's take a look at this. Yeah. So there we have it, right? A down bar right off of the lower SD1 line. Right, so that's a possible bounce there. All right, same thing here. Same thing there. And right there. Right. And let's see, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna kind of clean up all these drawing tools. There we go. Yeah, so we no longer have any kind of a clean bounce up in here. Or I shouldn't say clean, but we know we've cleaned up, I should say, these bounce signals. Right, because remember when we adjusted these solvers here, you know, to 3 points, you know, we also kind of put some limitations in there in that, right, the low price can only go so far beyond past, and the high price can only go so far past, you know, beyond the line, you know, depending on the direction price is coming from. Let's see. So I'm wondering why there is no short signal there, right? So there you go. That's SD1 lower line. So let's take a look at that. All right, so I'm just gonna put a name on this OR node here. All right, so looking at that solver, right, this bar touched the VWAP line here. And actually, oh, yeah, maybe that's why. Okay, so all of these bars, oh, okay, so the VWAP is really compressed right here. Yeah, so all of these bars are, all of these bars are like within 3 points of the SD lower line here. Yeah, so the reason why, let's just double check this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so we haven't gotten into this part of the logic yet. And I was just about ready to get into this here. So we have, right, the signal counter, a signal extender, and a comparison solver, right? So this comparison solver, if we read the name, it's checking if the close of the bar is 5 points from the VWAP, you know, in this case, the VWAP, the standard deviation one line. And let's let's see here. Yeah, so we might have to make a separate, this comparison we might have to have a separate comparison, one for the lower SD line and a separate one from the upper, just like we did here, right? So remember this guy, we built a separate solver, one for the upper and one for the lower SD line. So we might have to do the same thing here, but what this is doing is this is checking. There we go. So for example, right? So remember, we're comparing against this line right here. So in order to have a bounce, right, price needs to pull away, right? So you need this air gap between your SR line and price. Obviously, you know, this here just looks like garbage, right? There's clearly no bounce, right? Price is just kind of floating right next to, you know, both of these lines here. So to generate a good bounce signal, you need to have this separation between price and the line that it might bounce off of. Right? And same thing here. So we have two bars, you know, with enough spacing between the high, the close of the bar and the line, you know, that we're analyzing for the bounce. And so going back here, yeah, so here's the line. So we can see here there was no gap. All right, so that's what this is doing, is it's comparing the close of the bar, and so the previous system said, okay, we want a minimum of a 5-point gap between the close of the bar and whatever your support resistance line is. All right, and so we don't have that gap here. All right, and then at the same time, right, usually, you know, if you want more than just one bar with that gap, right, so to make a nicer looking bounce, right, usually you want several bars like we have here, right? This one only has 2 bars, right? This one here has several bars of this gap. So the signal counter is designed so that you can say, okay, I need a minimum of 5 bars with this 5-point gap out of 7 bars, right? So the signal counter allows you this flexibility where you can say, you know, 5 bars out of 7. All right, because right, because I don't have an example here, but sometimes, right, price will move down, you'll get your 5-point separation, but then a bar might pop up, you know, and interrupt that 5-point separation, and then price pops back down again, right? So being able to say, you know, I need 5 out of 7 bars with that 5-point separation, right? This kind of builds in that flexibility, you know, that humans will usually apply to, you know, a system here where you're like, okay, we have a couple of bars that didn't quite make that gap, but overall, you know, we have enough bars that pulled away, and so it looks good enough, right? So that is what the signal counter is doing, is it's making sure we have at least 5 bars with this 5-point separation right? Um, of this, of this separation here. And let's connect that in, right? And of course, yeah, we definitely don't have 5 bars in any of this, right? This is, yeah, this is what, in the evening here. So the VWAP is just beginning to expand. So let's see here. Yeah, there's not much price movement here. So we don't have 5 points. Let's see. There we go. All right. So going back another day there. Let's see. Yeah, I'm looking at the signal counter. Again, here's the line we're comparing against, right? So we can see when price is, when the close of the bar is really close to the line, obviously there's no separation, but we can see every time the close pulls away from the line more than 5 points, right, we get this output. And look right here, this is a great example, right? Right here, obviously, we have a couple of bars where the close did get really close to the line. However, well, previously we did get enough bars with that 5 bar separation, right? Price gets a little close. We have 2 bars, but remember that's okay because our signal counter says we need 5 out of 7. So when you're looking back, all right, we did, this would be the 6th and the 7th bar, but the prior 5 bars had that separation, that gap there. All right. So this is something else that is subjective. And let's see here. So I'm in the, yeah, I actually need to analyze. So I need to analyze the solver here to see if we need a separate solver, one for the lower line and one for the upper line here. And I'm pretty sure we're going to need that. Market's been down more than it's been up. I'm gonna have to go back a couple days. Here we go. All right. So yeah. So again, right. So here's the upper SD1. And so if price goes above it, yeah, price can come down for a long bounce from above, right? The upper SD1 line, right? A long bounce from above. Okay. Yeah. So again, that previous system was highly tailored to only focus on the R1, the PP line, and S1 from the pivots indicator. So yeah, so we're going to have to make another adjustment here to make this make it so that each indicator line is independent of the others here. So let's go and let's see, let's modify the upper one here. Connect that in. Yeah. So we're going to adjust this so that it checks for that 5-point separation. And I don't know, being the NQ, you might want more than 5 points. I'll be a little more liberal and I'll just go 9 points. Call it good enough. So, all right. So I've renamed it. Now let's go in and make all the setting adjustments. Okay, so this is going to be for the upper line only, right? So there you go. SD1 upper, both plots are selected. And so now we need to adjust it for the 9-point separation. So let's go into the into the comparison settings here. And let's see, what do we have here? Yeah, you'll notice, right, there's 2 fixed rules here. Right, and remember the original system was built prior to BloodHound version 2. So it was built with BloodHound version 1. Yeah, so the converter going from BloodHound version 1 files to BloodHound version 2 files. Yeah. To make sure that we have an exact conversion, yeah, it was split into 2 here. But what I'm going to do is combine. I'm going to combine this together. Yeah. So if you notice, right, on the upper, right, so the upper rule here, only the long output is active, right? The short output is set to 0, so it's not going to generate a short output, right? And then the lower rule here, the long output is set to 0, so it doesn't do anything. And the short output has a 1, so that's the only one active. So this upper one here, I'm basically going to transpose, right, the settings for the short output from this lower rule. I'm going to transpose it up to the upper. That way we're just dealing with one rule and I can delete this lower one. So let's make sure the settings, right? So this lower one says less than or equals to, less than or equals to, and it says plus -5. Actually, more directly, it should be -5 points. And let's turn the output on, set that to 1 there. All right. Now I can delete that. Yep. All right, I can delete that. And hit apply. Actually, let's just hit OK. All right. And perfect. Yeah. So remember, this is the line we're analyzing. So right in here, right in here, the close of the bar is not 5 points above or below. It's within 5 points of the line. So there's no output, right? But then one over here, or well, obviously way over here, we can see all the closing prices of these bars are definitely 9 points above, right, the line. And then over here, we can see, right, all the closing prices are 9 points. Oh, sorry. I didn't even adjust these to 9 points, did I? I left them at 5. There we go. All right, 9 points. There we go. All right. So there's a bigger gap now because none of the closes of these bars are 9 points, except that one, right? We had one bar in the middle where the close is 9 points away from that line, right? So looking at this, you can kind of, you can visualize, well, is that really enough clearance? Like in here, does that really look like it has enough clearance for a good bounce signal. You know, that's a subjective nature of all this, you know, so you'll have to figure out, is 9 points far enough away, or maybe it's too far away, things like that, right? So, all right. So we have the one solver here made, and we adjusted it for 9 points away, you know, for on the NQ. And then we have the signal counter. So remember, the signal counter needs at least 5 out of 7 bars. So we want to look at the signal counter. Remember, we had a single bar in here that had a long output, and it's been stripped out because it was only 1, not 5, not a minimum of 5 bars of separation. All right, so we can see this looks a little cleaner now, especially this. Right, we can now see that there's definitely a nicer looking separation between the close of those bars and the line there. All right, so that's what this little bit of the logic here is doing there, right? And then, of course, we have a signal extender, right? So once this gap has been, oh, that's what it was. All right, I'm going to interrupt myself. Yeah, so I'm going to go way, way back. So if you remember way back when I disconnected the lines between the R1 and the S1 lines, that's what it was. So the previous system, yeah, had this requirement that price had to come from below S1 all the way up to R1 in order to bounce off of R1. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, in order for price to be able to generate a signal off of S1, price had to come from R1. Yeah, that's why why that logic was interconnected. Yeah. Okay. So, which explains this next part, right? So we have the signal counter, right? Saying, okay, we need 5 out of 7 bars of separation. And then we have this signal extender here, which is 11 bars. You know, so you got to ask yourself, does it really take 11 bars for price to come back down? Yeah, does it really take 11 bars? Although, yeah, you notice how it's stopping as soon as price touches the line, right? That signal extender gets reset. Yeah, right there, that bar is touching the SD upper line. So, yeah, so I guess 11 bars is okay for extended because, yeah, look here, yeah, we do have this reset here. Yeah, so we have, so when price, right, when the bars are at the upper line, right, so in other words, you know, if a bar touches the line or gets close enough, right, once price gets close enough, then that is resetting our signal counter and our signal extender. Yeah, so that's okay, but you know, probably normally you probably don't need to take like this price separation logic and extend it out 11 bars. You know, that on the surface that sounds pretty excessive, but since we have this resetting functionality, it's compensating for the excessive number of bars, you know, that we're extended forward to. So let's see here. I'm going to see if I can show an example. Yeah, not really. Yeah, there's well, at least on this day, there's no good example. basically price is barreling down and hitting that line fairly quickly, right? But sometimes, price might just take its sweet time coming back down before it bounces off. Yeah. So maybe once in a while, 11 bars is necessary, but I think for the most part, probably not. Again, that's a part of the subjective nature. If you need price, like for right here, right? If you need price to come barreling down, before it bounces off of your line, right? Then obviously that only takes a couple of bars for price to come crashing down, right? Or vice versa, right? It would only take a couple of bars for price to come, racing up, So if that's the case, right, you would want to lower this number of bars, So the faster you need price to move before it bounces, then you would just lower this number here. So this high number, right, allows for price to kind of take its, sweet time, right? So once we get this price separation of 9 points, then 11 bars would allow price to just slowly drift down before it bounces off, right? So, yeah, so that's how you would adjust the signal extender. Is you could have a high number of bars to allow price to slowly drift into that line and maybe bounce off, but you would lower that number if you want price to come crashing down into that line very quickly. Obviously that takes less bars, so you would lower the number of bars right here, right? Extend signals 4, lower that down to, I don't know, 3 or 4, it all depends, right? Obviously, it depends on what your separation requirement is, right? So, all right. So that's the explanation of what this is doing, what its function is. So now let's actually get down to work and actually adjust this, which we did do. Just double check here. Yep, we consolidated it down to just one rules panel here. 9 points of separation, right? So 9 points above or 9 points below the VWAP line, well, the SD line. So, yeah, so we have the upper SD line adjusted here. So now we need to go in and adjust for the lower. Yeah, because we can see here, right? This has now been converted over to the upper line. So disconnect that. Let's copy it. Then we're going to make a new one and paste it here. Get rid of that. There we go. So we have it renamed. And now we need to go into the indicator and select the lower plot line there, right? SD1 lower line, right? And of course, we're still comparing the close of the bar being 9 points, right? The close of the bar has to be greater than 9 points from the line, or the close of the bar is less than 9 points, right? From the lower line. So that's all we had to adjust, was just, select the lower SD1 line there. And if we look at the solvers panel here, there we go. So here's the two new solvers that we made. The SD1 lower, right? SD1 lower. And the original solvers, right, which are up here, right? Let's see, which ones are they? There we go. There's the closed 9 points from the VWAP SD1 upper line. Yeah, so there's the original that we adjusted, changed so that it only works, or it's only working with the SD upper line. Yeah, there you go, SD1 upper line. Oh. So let's see. All right, so I'm just going to look at the signals for the upper line here. And yeah, bounce, bounce, bounce. Hopefully you guys can see that. Actually, it's here. Let me, you can adjust the racing stripe opacity here. So let me make it 30. There we go. So now those racing lines are a little darker. Hopefully they're easier to see for you guys. So there we go. A long bounce and a short bounce. Good. Yeah, long bounce, short bounce. Yeah, so it looks like these VWAP blinds have about a 70-point separation, somewhere in that ballpark. No, 30 point. Yeah, 30-point separation. Okay. 30-point separation. So the upper SD line looks good. Let me look at the lower line here. Oh yeah, look at that. So we had a bounce off of the lower line. All right, so here's our lower line. Yep, so bounce. Yeah, well, yeah, actually that bounce worked out, but again, as I mentioned earlier, allowing price to punch through there, that's a very subjective nature of trading there. And here we go. Price came up from below and bounced off of that. So it looks like, yeah, bounce. Yeah, kind of a bounce. Oh, there you go. That's the market open. There you go, market open. So yeah, definitely a little squirreliness in the market action. Man, let's see, what do we have here? So we have a long signal there. Oh, all right. Yeah. So this just kind of illustrates, how much do you really want to focus on filtering stuff. So, and yeah, you might, also with the VWAP, you might also consider the separation of the standard deviation lines as well, right? So here, let's move this. Remember, it's this line. So this bar, price moved way up, and now it's coming down, and this bar touches that lower standard deviation line, and then 3 bars later we get that up bar. Because again, remember, we didn't add any kind of filtering there about price. Have a super long bar where price might touch other standard deviation lines and things like that. Yeah, that actually, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, actually that might have been what the cross connection was between the R1 and the S1 on the original system, those cross connections. If you remember, I removed, let's see, what was it? Yeah, I removed an OR node going into the reset connections. Yeah, so that might have been another purpose of those cross connections, was that, you know, hey, if you get a really long bar that goes all the way from S1 to R1 or something like that, you know, reset the function nodes, you know, to kill the signal or something like that. You know, I'm not exactly sure what it was doing. Yeah. You know, so probably the easier solution is just make sure there's no signals until the trading day has evolved long enough so that your VWAP has also expanded out. You know, so like the easier thing to do is, all right, I think I'm gonna cut down the number of days on my chart, speed this up as soon as I can. All right, yeah, we don't need 15 days. I'll just knock it down to 10. That'll help a little bit. All right, as soon as this is done, I'm going to add a time session solver to basically remove those after hours signals when the VWAP is just obviously too narrow, you know, to really be tradable. I thought reducing the number of days was supposed to shorten the calculation time. Let's see. Yeah, I did put 10. All right, just making sure I didn't put 100 by accident. Man, let's reset this again here. Well, okay, there. So it did finally calculate. Let's add this time filter here. Now, surprisingly, I mean, actually that doesn't look too bad, and that doesn't look too bad, and that doesn't look too bad. But oh, let's see, yeah, we're at today. Where was it? Yeah, okay, so this was the day. Yeah, we're at the market open. Yeah, price is moving pretty volatile for this open here. You know, so some of these signals, I guess you could kind of see them, but at the same time, they do look a little messy. You know, so adding, and we can also see that the VWAP has not yet expanded very, very wide yet. You know, so that you know, a tight VWAP, obviously, or tight support resistance lines can, you know, make these signals, you know, look a little messy. So with the VWAP, you know, I think the easy thing to do is, right, so breaking this down, right, this is the SD1 upper line. This is the actual VWAP line, and then this would be the SD lower line, standard deviation 1 lower line. So we're all feeding them, you know, we're all joining them together with an OR node. And so we can take all these signals here, and actually I'm going to turn off the auto update, and we can add a AND node, and then add a time session solver there, like so. Let's go into the time session solver here, and I'll just quickly use the RTH session. And, you know, at least on this day, we can see that, wow, it took at least half an hour before the market, or before the VWAP started expanding. Yeah, I guess before the market started making enough volatility to expand the VWAP. So you might want to. So if you right click on the the time bar here, or the time scale area, if you right click on it, you can see you can change the resolution of the time. So I'm going to go to half-hour blocks, scroll down, so now each row is half an hour, and then I can just drop this down and knock a half an hour off of the opening time, like that, a little quicker, and then click OK, like so, and then look at the AND node, right? And this AND node basically just has a time filter, right, on it. There. So, and oh, yeah, that's right. I disabled this. Let's turn the auto update on now that we're done. Oh, all right, hold on. Let's turn it back off. Hit the apply button. All right, now it's calculating. And then I'll turn the auto update back on. So all of these signals here should disappear in the early morning, and there you go, markets are closed. Feels like it's taken longer now that I've taken 5 days off of my chart. There we go. Yeah. Yeah, let's see, one more step here is naming the logic template up here. So if you click the result node, you can name the logic template there, and there. All right, let's see, one more subtopic here to include, right? So we have the core logic built for 3 different lines. All right. Obviously the VWAP line, and then the upper and lower SD1 lines. Now, if you want to include those evenly spaced, imaginary lines, right? So I drew them on the chart here. So if you want to include, those evenly spaced imaginary, price points, it's the same thing. Right, you would have to duplicate the logic here. However, let me zoom in. Let me zoom into this over here. Right, you would duplicate that, and right, instead of input B being an indicator, instead of that, what you would do is you would adjust to a fixed value, and then you could put in that fixed value. So let's say, yeah, 15,400, right? And so then you would be comparing, right, price to this fixed value price point there, like so, right? And then, yeah, you would have to, oh, all right, sorry, yeah, it's calculating now, shoot. Yeah, so you would have to do that, for the 3 solvers here, that are checking the bar prices against whatever your support resistance value is. You have to build a separate group of logic, for all of that as well. Yeah, it's still calculating. My chart must have been missing a bunch of data before I changed the number of days. let's see. All right, so we got the logic template name adjusted. Oh, let me turn this off. All right, yeah. So to finish off this thought here, yeah, if you wanted to use those evenly spaced, right, imaginary values there, right, you'd have to do that for all three nodes there and create a separate group of logic for each of those price points. Yeah. Yeah, so let me put this back to the indicator value there. All right. And yeah, I think that covers it. Yeah, I'll just include here that yeah, with bounce signals, off of multiple lines, surprisingly, the support resistance solver actually can't be used. So, and that, and again, the reason why um, is figuring out, right, that separation that you need, right? So making sure that price has had that price separation before before it approaches that support resistance line for a possible bounce, analyzing that gap there, as we kind of saw, you need a comparison solver, with that price separation, but more important that this comparison solver, has to be only looking at one line, all right, one indicator plot at a time. Right. And then same thing for the other components, which is, identifying when, price is approaching a line, or when price gets close enough to a support resistance line, that it's basically that setup for the bounce off of that line. Again, you're comparing all those prices to that specific line. So yeah, and you want to make sure that yeah, so the real key difference in using the comparison solver versus using the support resistance solver is that the support resistance solver doesn't tell you which line price is close to, right? The support resistance just tells you, either, okay, you're far enough away from all the lines or you're close enough to all the lines. Which line it is, you don't know. So using the comparison solver, you know that exactly within your logic, which line exactly you're working with. So yeah, so let's go ahead and we're going to delete these solvers here. Let's see, what do we got? VWAP line. Yeah, these were some extra filters here from the previous system. Yeah, so I'm just going to delete those. And then on the solvers list, let's see, I think it was that one. Yep. And I think it was that one. Yep. All right. There we go. Got it correct. So there. So now, yeah. So we cleaned up the logic here. So it is important, to keep your system cleaned up, right? You don't want a bunch of unused solvers just laying around doing nothing. Now if I knew I was going to be using those solvers later on for some, for something else, then I wouldn't have deleted them. I would have just left them in there knowing that they would have been useful later on. But since I know that, they're not going to be used, then just delete them. I feel like there was one more comment I was going to make here. Let's see. Now maybe I'll think of it here in just a second. Let's get this cleaned up. Let me get rid of these lines. All right. Yeah, I can't think of the other little piece here I want to make a comment on. So I guess we're done.